Right to be Read podcast, episode number 94, interview with Mark Dawson.
Hey authors, wish you could just write books and forget about all this marketing and coordinating with freelancers and formatting and proofreading and stuff? You're not alone. It's every artist's dream to just be able to create art while turning over the whole business and marketing side to someone who really loves and is really great at doing just that. If you're ready to start treating your writing like a business and get an experienced publishing and marketing team behind your words, pay a visit to Archangel Ink. Archangel Ink does absolutely everything needed to take a manuscript and turn it into a finished product ready to sell in all markets and multiple formats, from cover design to audiobook and everything in between. And as an Archangel Ink client, you'll be able to promote your book through Buck Books, the world's fastest growing book promotion website, at no extra charge. To find out more, go to www.archangelink.com. That's archangelink.com.
You are listening to the Right to Be Read podcast, and this is your host, Ani Alexander.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the podcast that inspires and encourages writers. I'm your host, Ani Alexander, and today I have a very special guest, and we will be having a very interesting interview. I don't know if you have seen this or not, but a few weeks ago there was an article on Forbes which went viral, and it spoke about a self-published writer who's got paid from Amazon about $450,000 a year. And, of course, it was very popular among self-published authors and the writers who wanted to become authors as well. I came across it at some point too, and as soon as I read it, I decided that I have to find the author and I have to take an interview from him in order to find out together with you, how did he make it. So today my guest is Mark Dawson, and he worked in the London film industry until recently. He now writes full-time after the success he came across too, and he's working on 3 series. So let's just dive straight into the interview and find out how did he make it, what is he doing, and how you can do the same too. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Right to Be Read podcast. I'm your host, Ani Alexander, and today we have a very special guest. Actually, I read an article on Forbes saying Amazon pays $450,000 a year to this self-published writer. So actually, that was the reason I kind of decided that, this is really, really catchy. This is very interesting. You would like to hear about that. And I found the author. I got in touch with him, and Mark Dawson is now with me, and I'm really happy to have him over. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thanks, Annie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you have to admit that, the article was kind of really, really impressive. And I guess that everyone who read it kind of, the first thought was, oh, how come, how did he manage to do that? But before we get into that, which is like the biggest question we would like to find answers to, let's start from the beginning. And I know that you haven't been a writer from the start, and you've been doing many different things. So I would like to find out about your journey. How did you end up writing, and how did you end up, transitioning from one thing to another?
Sure. I have been writing for a long time, actually. I was originally published by Macmillan in the UK in 99 or 2000, kind of 15 or 16 years ago. I was working as a lawyer in those days, and I wrote in spare time, in the evenings, lunchtimes, that kind of thing, and had a book published. Then changed jobs and went to work for another law firm, and had a second book published again with Macmillan a year or two after that. And it was fun up to a point, but the experience was a little dispiriting pretty much as soon as the book was on the shelf, because I'm sure some of your listeners will be able to empathise with this, but it's very exciting to see your book in the flesh. Then it gets quite disappointing when it doesn't appear on the shelves in the kind of prime positions, or it doesn't even appear on the shelves at all because the publisher hasn't been able to get the books into the stores. There was no promotion, no marketing to speak of, and the books, they're not amazing. I write better books now, but they just kind of withered on the vine and didn't really do very well. So I stopped writing after that and took 5 or 6 years off. And in the meantime, I changed jobs. I stopped being a lawyer and went to work for a company in the British film industry. So I was like what we'd call a classifier. So we'd watch films and give them their age ratings, which was an amazing job. And I've always loved movies. So it was kind of a dream job. And I stayed there for 10 years. And eventually I kind of picked writing up again, I suppose, 4 or 5 years ago, and started to publish on Kindle. Got an agent. We did the rounds with a couple of the books that I'd written. Got some very nice rejections. We would have published this, but we published something very similar 6 months ago. So all that kind of stuff. So it didn't knock me too much because a friend of mine had published something on Kindle, so I thought I'd give that a try. And over the course of the last 3 years, I've gone from selling, a copy to my mum and friends, to selling hundreds of thousands of copies now. So one of my series, my biggest selling series, with a character called John Milton, I think I've probably sold the 300,000th, or had downloaded the 300,000th copy sometime in the last couple of weeks, which is pretty cool.
Okay, I see. So since you've been in our shoes and, you started from there and you've been selling your first books to your mom and your friends, and then, most probably you also went to the dashboard and saw that, pretty round zero in there. What made you kind of realize that, things have to change and, something has to be done in order to change the situation? I mean, did you kind of come up with your own solutions, or you made some research and saw what others were doing? How did this process go?
Well, I love learning, and when I'm trying to understand something, I'll absorb everything that I can to teach myself to do it better than anybody else is doing it. So in the early days, I would have found K-boards and sucked everything I could out of that from people like Hugh Howey and Bella Ventre and the big indie names who used to post there. So that was a good place to start. Then I kind of ended up finding 3 or 4 main podcasts and going through all of their back episodes. So self-publishing podcast, Rocking Self-Publishing, Joanna Penn's podcast. And, and I've been on all those podcasts now, which is a nice kind of coming full circle. But in over the course of the last 18 months, I would have sucked everything out of those. And then since then, I've kind of broadened my diet out to more social media marketing podcasts, marketing, copywriting, anything that's got anything to do with or could be useful for selling books. That's I'm interested in it. So I've just educated myself through exposing myself to as much of that as I can and just soaking it all up. So that's kind of given me my skill set. But going back to you asked when I had those handfuls of books being sold and then going to gradually building on that. I remember really quite well. I live outside Salisbury in the UK, so a very pretty area in the countryside in Wiltshire, in the southwest of England. And I remember once, this would be like October 2012 or maybe August 2012, something like that. My book had been up, The Black Mile, which is the first book that I self-published, had been up on Amazon for 6 months, and I didn't do anything with it. I just kind of left it there, and I don't know whether I expected it just to be discovered, which is obviously, that doesn't really happen. So a friend of mine tipped me off and said that you should try the promotional tools that Amazon makes available. So this was back in the day. I don't think countdown deals were around then, but you could still do the 5 free days per 90-day exclusive periods. So I did that over the course of a weekend, and I did it on a Friday, kind of forgot about it. And then on the Sunday, I went for a long bike ride out into the countryside, and it was a hot day. The farmer was kind of harvesting his fields, and I fancied a rest. So I stopped the bike, got off, and sat down in this field, put my back to a tree and just kind of watched the farmer for a bit. Then I thought, I'll just check my numbers. So I took my phone out of my pocket, miraculously had a signal, and went to the dashboard, hit refresh, and then found out there'd been something like 40 or 50,000 downloads over the course of the weekend.
Wow.
And that was the kind of, yeah, exactly. It was this I'm missing a trick here. This is legitimate. It could be interesting. And back in those days, before the algorithm changed, a free download counted about the same as a sale. So when the book came off free, it was very highly ranked, started to sell a bit more. And so I actually started to make some money. So, the next month I actually got a check from Amazon, which was the first time the money had come from them to me rather than from me to them, which had always been the case up until that point. And since then I wrote more books, and then more and more books. I mean, last year I wrote 6 novels last year, 2 novellas, and every time I release a book, it does better than the one before because my mailing list is bigger. I'm better at launching. I understand how to do that better. To the extent that I can launch books into the top 250 on Amazon.com reasonably reliably now without any advertising.
Okay, so let's touch this point since you already mentioned that. How do you build your list in that case?
Well, there's loads of ways. The most obvious way is you've got to have calls to action in your book. So make sure there's... Well, I'll back up one. You need to. There are 3 things you need to do. You need to. First of all, you've got to make a compelling offer. So, I find giving away something is still the most powerful way of getting people to come onto your list. Mm-hmm. So, I give away 4 books. You don't need to give away 4, but I've got like 17 or 18 books I can work with now, so I'm able to do that. But you can give away 1 novella is more than enough to get people to sign up. So, once you've worked out what your offer is, then you've got to drive traffic to it, or advertise it. So you can do that in your book. So definitely put a call to action in the back of the book, and I also recommend putting one in the front of the book so people can see it when they look at the look inside on the Amazon product page. Mm-hmm. You should put it on your author page. Amazon gives you a page that you can personalize with information. Definitely put that on your author page. If you've got promotion or kind of a free promotion or a paid promotion with, say, BookBub or any of the other sites, if you can anticipate there's going to be traffic coming to a particular product page, I'd recommend putting a reference towards the top of the description saying that you can get 4 books in my case or a novella or whatever by signing up at the mailing list. Because my view is a subscriber is much more valuable to me than a sale. Because once I've got someone's email address, I can then tell them myself when I've got something new to sell rather than relying on Amazon or Apple or Kobo or whoever it is to get in touch on my behalf. I'd much rather be able to do that personally. So there's that. The other thing that I found out, this is the newest thing I've been working on the last 4 months or so, and the most powerful has been Facebook advertising. So I started to experiment with that January the 29th was the first day I put an ad up, and I originally just concentrated on kind of marketing this offer to get 4 free books for signing up on my mailing list. And I targeted the ad quite carefully so that it appeared in the news feeds of people who read the kinds of books that I write. And in, I think it was about 7 or 8 weeks, I added 4,000 new subscribers, which was incredible. And since I've been teaching people what I've done over the last month or so, and that's not an unusual level of sign up. So we've replicated that with several other writers, and not at a huge cost either. It's you obviously got to pay something, but for me I've paid about $2,000 for those 4,000 subscribers, but you can do it for cheaper, and you can. You don't need 2,000. If you decide you want to spend $500, you'd probably get 250, 500, 600 new subscribers. It's really, really powerful.
Mm-hmm, I see. So basically, when you kind of build your email list, many people well, not many, but some might kind of, subscribe to your list in order to get those free books. And then you have this goal of keeping them in your list because they always have this option of unsubscribing. Mm-hmm. So how do you keep those people in your list engaged? What are you sending them, and how do you create this relationship so they stay and, be a loyal email lister?
Sure.
I say.
Sure. Well, first of all, you shouldn't be afraid of people unsubscribing. If they don't want to be on the list, then it's better that they're off the list rather than on it, because you're paying for everyone on your list. Once you're over if you're with MailChimp, once you're over 2,000 subscribers, you're paying from that point. So I make it easy for people to unsubscribe. I don't mind them doing that. What I don't like them doing is reporting an email for spam, because MailChimp will shut you down if you go over a certain threshold on spam reports. So you need to avoid that. But, in terms of actually contacting your readers, it depends. I mean, I don't email very often. I'll email when I've got something to sell, like a new book coming out, or an offer that I think might be of value to my readers. Beyond that, I don't contact them every week. Some people do. It doesn't work for me. I think if I was getting emails every week in my inbox, I would unsubscribe probably. So that's just me. So I'm a little bit more kind of reticent than others, but whatever suits really is kind of whatever you think is appropriate for your list. That was fine. One thing I would say in terms of interaction, I reply to pretty much every email that I get from readers, and it's difficult to do that these days because I get quite a lot of emails now. But I'll do it for as long as I can, because one of the reasons I think I did so well last year was because people feel, because I'm quite personable and I'll reply to everything. I don't use canned responses that if someone asks me a question, I'll answer. I think you're turning readers into fans, and that's quite an important definition change there. Because readers are great. We need readers, but fans are the people that you can rely on to be loyal and to buy your new stuff when it comes out. And you don't need that many fans to sustain a creative career. I've heard 10,000 is the kind of the magic number, but I don't think you need that many. I think if you get 5,000, you can do pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. So basically, the logic is the following: you give away, several. You can even give away one book. In your case, you're giving out 4 books for free, and you're driving through Facebook advertising. You're targeting people who are reading similar books that you are writing. And later on, you're getting them in your email list, and then you you have them as potential readers for your next upcoming books, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, so, and I guess that the number of books, the portfolio you're having is quite important as well. I guess, to scale up, you have to write more books, and, this thing won't really work if you just have only 2 out there. So how do you manage to stay so prolific and to write so many books in such a short period of time?
You can build a list with 2. You can build a list with 1 book. I mean, if you're giving something away, if you've got 1 book, I would recommend. My view is, if you've just written your first book, I would give it away, because your main objective should be to build your list and be writing your second book. Those are the things that you need to be thinking about. It's very, very unlikely that people are going to make any money on with just 1 book. It's some people do it, but they're very, very fortunate. I think you've got to kind of look long term, and that first book is your asset to get people on your mailing list. And then when you've got them on your mailing list, that's when you can sell them the second book, and then you can sell them the third book. So I always focus kind of into the medium and long term. I don't care about giving stuff away in the short term, because I'm playing a longer game than that. So that was kind of avoiding the question. Remind me what your question was again.
Well, I was saying, how do you manage to stay so prolific and write so many books?
Sure. Well, I did 6 last year, and 2 novellas, and that was whilst I was commuting. I still had the day job there, so I was commuting from Salisbury to London and back, which is 3 hours on the train. and I had 2 kids. I've still got 2 kids under 3, and a busy job. So it's a good question, and I often wondered how I managed it. But the reason is it was just that 3 hours a day on the train. I can usually, if I've got no distractions, I can do 2,500 to 3,000 words in 3 hours. And so it's just a question of doing the maths from that point. If you're doing that commute, 300 days a year, say, or 280, before you know it, you've got up to 800,000 words. And if you've got to be prolific. That's right, and you've got to have ideas, and you've got to. I mean, I'm very particular on quality, so it's not like I'm just churning out stuff and then it's not being edited or all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't publish something that I wasn't very pleased with. And if you look at the books on Amazon, my review average is really high, so it isn't 4.8, 4.9 out of 5. So it's not like. Readers are disappointed with the books. They go down really well, but it is possible to do that. I mean, if when I was in a cafe today, I write in cafes around the place where I live, and they saw me writing on my laptop, so they came over and asked me what I was doing. So I said, I'm writing. I'm a writer, and as happens quite a lot, the waitress said, I'd like to be a writer too.
Yeah.
So, and how many books have you written? So I said 17, 18. And then, how on earth have you done that? And it's, because I'm very busy. And I was thinking, I wasn't thinking, I said, you can find reasons not to write, right? It's easy to find excuses, but if you want to write and you're dedicated to doing it, you can find time. That 3 hours on the train could have been dead time for me, or I could have done something else, but that was the time I chose to write. Before that, when I was a lawyer, when I was living in London, I'd write at the weekends. I'd write any spare minute I had. So lunchtime, I'd do 60 minutes. I'd get up early and do another hour before I went to work, and then I'd work in the evening. So if you want something bad enough, you can make sacrifices. And if you're not prepared to make sacrifices, then I think you have to question whether or not you actually really want to be a writer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with that, because I also have plenty of examples where people are obviously much more occupied and with heavier responsibilities than many others, but they managed to do that, and others just ended up with excuses. So basically, what do you think? How much of your success is due to the fact that you are writing series?
Yeah, quite a lot. And I do things like regular surveys of my readers. Mm-hmm. So I like to know, what their. I like to know lots of things about them. I like to know their ages, their gender, how much they think my books are worth, all that kind of stuff. But one of the questions I ask is, how many books have you read of mine? And the average answer comes back 7 or 8. So the reason for that is pretty straightforward. They tend to start with I've got 3 series, so they'll start with one of the series, and I kind of engineer that by giving away those 4 books. I give away 3 of them are the first books in those respective series. Mm-hmm. So once someone starts reading, I'm confident enough my writing is good enough and compelling enough that they're often hooked. And so they basically get the first one for free, and then they'll chew through the series that they're looking for. And then they'll often will go back to the other series and then the other one. And the way I set my mailing list up, I tend to know what book someone has signed up to my list from after reading. Mm-hmm. So if I know that, then I can email them. Well, if I know that if they've read book 1 in one particular series, the first automatic email they'll get will be, telling them about book 2 in that series. And then maybe after 4 or 5 months, they'll get an email saying that if you like the John Milton series, you'll love the Beatrix Rose series. And then I introduce them to the first book in that series. Perhaps give them an extract. Obviously, you have give them a link to the relevant store, all that kind of stuff. That not many writers go into that kind of level of detail of knowing that much about their readers. So, not just who they are, but where they found you. That kind of stuff is very valuable, because it informs your email marketing, which is still the most powerful form of marketing that we have.
Yeah, I see. So basically what you're doing, you're ending the book of the series with a cliffhanger, so they're looking forward for the next one?
Not really cliffhanger. Cliffhangers. Well, I've done that a couple of times, and you'll get some people who hate that. Other people love it. It doesn't bother me as a reader, but some people feel cheated if a story doesn't conclude. Mm-hmm. But you can leave a narrative arc that's open across a series, and that's fine. I just think you've got to. My view is you need to resolve the main points of the narrative within the book that you're writing, but it's fine to leave something open. And the other thing with writing a series is people become invested in the character. So I get a lot of people saying they feel very attached to John Milton, who's my main character. And obviously he's a constant in all of those books, so people want to know what he did next. And that's something that you can parlay that to increase the read-through rate of a particular series. It's more difficult to do that with standalone books because the only thing you've got there is your writing, which is fine because that can, if you're a good writer, I read the books I read, the authors I read don't tend to write in series. So I love Martin Amis, for example. And he writes a series of standalone books. But the reason I go back to him and Bret Easton Ellis and people like that is because I love their writing. So it's possible to do the other way around. But I think if for kind of new writers who are just getting their feet wet with this kind of stuff, you're probably going to find it slightly easier if you do write in a series. Mm-hmm. But it's not essential.
And how long are each book of the series?
They vary from, say, 65,000 words to 100,000 words.
Oh, so they're like a full-length novel length.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. So, and are there any specifics in writing series? Like, for example, let's say someone has written only standalone novels, and what are the adjustments or what are like the specific things that one has to know about writing series?
Just think about the broader arc. So you have the story won't be contained just in one volume. It's got to be broader and will go over 5 or 6 or could go over many more books than that. So you just got to have a slightly longer term view of things. So maybe start plotting something out that's a little bigger, and then try to think about the kinds of things that you want to talk, the kinds of journey you want to take your protagonist on.
Okay, I see. So let's maybe talk a bit, since your main marketing approach is driving traffic from Facebook ads. Maybe we could talk a bit about that. Like if someone is just starting out and doesn't know anything about Facebook ads, and apparently, there is a certain amount of investment involved. I mean, many would would not feel very comfortable getting into this because they might not understand how it works. So, how one should approach this? Do they start with small amounts and experiment, or are there any things that they can find out straight away and know how to approach this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a course on that at the moment, so that I've got three free videos that people can look at, and we're getting a lot of people signing up for that, and that can be found at www.selfpublishingformula.com. There will be a paid course at the end of that, but obviously there's no obligation on anyone to do anything other than enjoy and learn from those free videos. In terms of financial exposure and that kind of stuff, you do need to be careful because Facebook does make it pretty easy to spend a lot of money. So I spend $350 a day at the moment in terms of advertising. I definitely wouldn't recommend that for someone who's just getting into it, but you can spend as little as $1 a day, and that's what I would recommend. You start slow, so you limit your exposure, so you set a limit that you won't spend more than $1 every day or whatever you want, $5 or $10 or whatever it is, and then you experiment with ads, and you learn as you're experimenting. You split test, you find out which ads work, which targeting works best, because Facebook is unbelievably powerful in terms of what it offers with targeting these days. So I target my books to lots of ways. I can target them to people who look like my subscribers. So I can take a mailing list from my mailing list, a CSV, put that into Facebook, and Facebook will generate a list of people to advertise to who are quite like people on my mailing list. So that's powerful. Or I could send them to people who like the fan pages of other authors that I'm competing with. So my books are compared to Lee Child and Jack Reacher. Mm-hmm. So I can send ads just to people who like Lee Child and Jack Reacher. So, and that's scraping the surface. There's a lot more you can do with all kinds of complicated stuff that is not necessarily at the early level, but there's a lot you can dig into once you get a bit more experienced. But you need to learn, and you need to be reasonably careful. But it's provided you know how to set your budget, which is quite easy to do. You're fine. It's pretty straightforward.
So you drive them straight to the opt-in page where you kind of you show your free 4 books.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Facebook ads are kind of, you are pretty limited in your message and the amount of words you can use and things like that. So how do you make sure that it's attractive enough for people to click and to get to your page? Because on your page, you're pretty free and you can, you have more freedom and flexibility in creating the message. But what about the ads?
You're not actually. You're only limited in space if you use the ads manager. So that's the first of all, no one should boost their posts. It's a complete waste of money. So don't do that. And also I wouldn't recommend using the ads manager. So it's the simplest way of generating ads, but it's not very effective. And there are lots of limits on how much space you can use and copy. So what you should use is the Power Editor. So it's a slightly more complicated tool to learn, but the benefits completely outweigh the effort that you'd need to expend to learn how to use it. So once you've got that, you do have more space to play with. But I don't recommend writing essays in adverts. You just need. My ads can be quite short, but you just need to learn how to write compelling copy. And that's something that you can learn. You can learn looking at other ads on Facebook that seem to be doing quite well, or you can look more widely at advertising generally. So, what billboards do you find are compelling? What kind of language do people who write sales copy use? And there are podcasts you can listen to. There's some really excellent Facebook podcasts and social media advertising podcasts generally that you can dig into for really useful advice.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see. So is Facebook your only marketing tool you use to drive traffic to your website, to your opt-in page, or do you use also something else? I mean, for example, how do you deal with other social media channels?
I've got a presence on Twitter with 3,000 or 4,000 people following. I tend to use that as a kind of a conversational tool. I haven't really dug into the Twitter ads yet because that platform is still pretty new. They've got some quite cool things that will lead generation tools on Twitter that I would like to get into once I've got a little bit of time. And once it's settled down a little bit. But for the moment, Facebook is number one. I'm doing a little bit of Google AdSense and AdWords advertising, and I'm looking into YouTube ads at the moment as well. So there are plenty of potential places that you can place your ads. But for me, I think if you're starting out, you should pick one and learn that. It's very easy to kind of scatter your effort across everything, but the best way is to focus on one thing, get that down, and then once that's running on autopilot, then you can look at something else.
Okay, I see. And what do you think? I mean, what you're doing is a long-term strategy, and it takes time and it takes a bit of patience because I assume that, it won't happen overnight. So how long did it take you to to gain the momentum and to get to the stage where you could live on that income solely? I did it in... I guess last year was kind of the pivotal year for me. So when the year started in January, I was probably earning a little less than I earn in my day job. And then March was that was the tipping point for me. So I suddenly went
I'm still not entirely sure what happened. I had a book release that did very, very well. It would have been that, and then people going back and buying the other books. But I went from earning a bit less than I was earning in my day job to earning 2 or 3 times more, and that stayed constant throughout the year. And I'd said to myself that if I could sustain that, if I could earn the same as my day job for a year, then that would be the moment to leave. So that would have been February or March 2015. But things were going so well. There was they reduced the headcount at work, so they offered some redundancy payments, and just kind of felt like, okay, I could also take some money to leave now, which I was going to do anyway. It was kind of just one of those opportunities that was difficult to turn down. Mm-hmm. But the kind of takeaway from that is it is possible to be quite quick. So I went from, I've only really been doing this properly since kind of the middle of 2013. That was my first Milton book was published in June 2013. So just over just under 2 years, I've been doing this seriously with an eye to doing it as a career, and I've gone from selling not very many to I'll sell or have downloaded maybe 10,000 books this month, which is it is you can accelerate quite quickly if you learn and you work hard.
Okay, so if you kind of make big conclusions and looking back at your journey, what would you advise? What are like the biggest, most important thing that you did which brought the biggest change in your journey?
Yeah, well, kind of the first thing, we will assume that people have written a good book, because that's kind of non-negotiable. If the book isn't good, it doesn't matter what you do. You'll struggle to sell. But assuming that the book is good, which I'm sure it will be, the thing that the main thing, and I was slow to do this, I lost some momentum in the early days. You must get a mailing list immediately. Don't wait. Kind of assume that you'll be successful quickly, because if you do that, you'll be in a position to take advantage of good fortune if things do proceed well for you. So when I said to you before, I had that weekend where I had tens of thousands of free books downloaded. I didn't have a mailing list then, so maybe I lost the chance to add 1,000 people to my list, and perhaps that would have meant I would have been able to grow those people into 2,000 faster, and then 4,000. I could have been at the stage I'm at now, maybe this time last year. So definitely, you must get a mailing list. It's the most powerful marketing tool that indie authors have in their arsenals, and it's not expensive. You can get a MailChimp account for nothing. I would personally would recommend people paying for the paid account immediately. It's not expensive, and you get the useful things like automation, so automated emails, and other tools that are really, really helpful. It's not essential if money is tight, but if you've got $10 a month that you can invest in your career, then I would definitely spring for the paid version as soon as you can. So that's the main thing. You don't get that sorted out first. Write a good book, and then immediately, don't wait, write another book. And another thing, I spoke at the London Book Fair for the Amazon panel a couple of weeks ago, and I got lots and lots of questions afterwards from people had taken 2 or 3 years to write their novel, and that's fine if you're happy to do that, and that's how long you need to take to write a book. That's fine, but you are much less likely to be successful if it takes you 3 years to write a novel, because you do need. One of the things that is very important these days is you have to work, and you've got to be productive, and you've got to you've got to get new books to the market as reasonably regularly, because if you're writing thrillers and you take 2 years to write a thriller, and I'm writing thrillers every 4 or 5 months, I'm going to take your readers. And the same goes for me. If I write one every 6 months, say, and Russell Blake, who's another indie author writing the same kind of genre that I do, at roughly the same pace, if he suddenly ups his pace and his books are good and all that kind of stuff, then I'm going to lose readers too. So you've got to be reasonably prolific. I think I don't think you need to write 6 novels a year like I did last year. I think 2 is probably fine, or 3. But you can't. What I'm trying to say is, don't. If you've got something that's nearly finished, then there's nothing gained by moving punctuation around.
Yeah.
It's you've got to know when to ship, when to hit right, when to type the end, get it to your editor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see. And maybe just a question so people can imagine. We're talking about a good book, and I guess that includes the cover, the editing, everything that adds up quality to the book. So in average, to end up with a decent, good quality book, how much one has to spend?
Not as much as you would expect if you read some things in the paper these days. So, I mean, I spend, my covers cost me about $175 each. My editing, probably $500 maybe. And I pay for someone to format my books into MOBI files, EPUBs and PDFs. And that cost me about $60. So I can bring it in for, I don't know, less, $600 maybe, perhaps a touch less. You don't need... You could do it less than that, but it's definitely, unless you're like a really, really, really good, unless your day job is designing book covers, or you're very, very good with Photoshop, I would say don't try and do covers yourself, because you might think it looks good, but chances are it looks terrible. And if your book cover doesn't work, you're really, really disabling your chances of doing well, because it's a sad fact that that is the first thing that people look at. So.
Yeah.
You have to invest in that. And the second thing is, you got to make sure your book is well edited. So the first couple of books, I thought I could do it myself, a combination of me and my wife, and we could read it. We wouldn't miss anything. But of course, we missed everything, because I'm the worst. The writer is the worst person possible to edit your own stuff, because you'll miss everything. So the early reviews for The Black Mile and The Imposter, my first 2 Amazon books, saying that this book has got mistakes. I love the book, but he needs to get an editor. The fact was I didn't have one, so it was a fair comment. And since then, I've gone back and they've all been professionally edited. But it's definitely something that's an expense that's kind of non-negotiable. You got to treat this. You have to treat this as a business. And you've got to be, and you will suffer if you put out stuff with mistakes, especially in like the first 10%, the kind of stuff that's going to be in the look inside or the sample, because people will judge you based on that. So you cannot afford to have any mistakes at the start of the book, because you just won't get sales.
Yeah, I see. Well, thank you very much for this valuable information. Before we part, maybe you could remind once again where people could go to get the free videos for the Facebook advertising training you've set up. Yeah,
sure. So that's at www.selfpublishingformula.com, and my website's at markjdawson.com. You can get me at either of those places.
Okay, great. Well, I'll put them in the show notes and make sure that people know where to go. Thank you once again for spending this time with me. It's really interesting to kind of, and inspiring at the same time, to follow the path of someone who's been in our shoes just a few years ago.
Sure, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Thank you very much. Okay, I guess that was it for today. So if you are interested in Mark's strategy, just check out his free videos. And in case you prefer to listen to audiobooks instead of reading them, please check out Audible, where you can get one free audiobook by signing up to their free trial. Just go to www.audibletrial.com/write to be read. 2 as a number, B as a letter, just like the podcast is spelled. Well, take care, have a great week, keep writing, and I wish you success with your books.
Hey authors, wish you could just write books and forget about all this marketing and coordinating with freelancers and formatting and proofreading and stuff? You're not alone. It's every artist's dream to just be able to create art while turning over the whole business and marketing side to someone who really loves and is really great at doing just that. If you're ready to start treating your writing like a business and get an experienced publishing and marketing team behind your words, pay a visit to Archangel Ink. Archangel Ink does absolutely everything needed to take a manuscript and turn it into a finished product ready to sell in all markets and multiple formats, from cover design to audiobook and everything in between. And as an Archangel Ink client, you'll be able to promote your book through Buck Books, the world's fastest growing book promotion website, at no extra charge. To find out more, go to www.archangelink.com. That's archangelink.com.